Hi there. Welcome to Full Moon Women. This is a bonus episode. We normally put out 2 episodes every month, and they are couplets. The first episode is a woman's story told in her own voice about some aspect of her inner life. And then the follow-up story 2 weeks later is an interview that I do with someone who can bring greater context and greater appreciation to the storytelling woman's story. So this episode is a bonus episode, and it's just me. I won't have a guest today, and I wanted to talk to you about this magical yurt that is surprisingly related to why this show even exists and what this show is all about. So I shared in the last bonus episode about how this show started to begin with, and that was after I shared my own personal story about my own inner life. And I published that show with my husband, and we put it out under the podcast name Totem. And then I had my birthday, and I was turning, I think, 39. And I wanted to celebrate my birthday. And so it was during COVID era. And so there wasn't anything open here in the Netherlands. And Pete had remembered that there was a yurt not very far from where we live that you could rent, sort of like as an Airbnb. So we checked it out, and it was free. It was open. We could rent it, and I could have a few of my friends come to the yurt and celebrate. And if you're not familiar with yurts, a yurt is it's like a big tent. It's a circular tent, circular in the way that a teepee is. And it has straight sides that come up. I mean, it's cylindrical. And then the top of the yurt kind of comes up more as a point. And then there's an opening in the very top, sort of like a smoke opening. And the sides of the tent are traditionally covered with skins or felt. And nowadays, when there's more sort of, let's say, modern yurts, there's like a canvas that's used on the side. So it's, to many Western people, it's kind of a very unusual building shape, but it's used by nomadic people in Central Asia to, put up and then break down and take to the next place as they move around. So this place that Pete had told me about that I could maybe rent for my birthday gathering was in a yurt, and also kind of hidden in this vegetable garden behind this sort of rural area. And so we arrived, and I thought, wow, this is cool. So we set up, and I had some women come to the yurt to have drinks and celebrate my birthday. And while I was in this yurt, I was looking around, and I loved the shape of it being circular. And I loved that everyone was sort of there, and it was very cozy and together, and we were facing one another. And I thought, I want to do something else in this space. Somehow I want to host some kind of other event again to make use of this really cool place. And so I devised a plan to start hosting women's retreats, small women's retreats in that yurt. And it was all really inspired by this yurt. And so over the last year, since I shared my personal story, and also we started this podcast, I've hosted 4 retreats, one every season, one every 3 months for women. And what we've mainly done is we've come and we've been in this yurt together, 6, 8, 10 women, and we have shared our stories. We've gone around and just shared what's on our hearts, what's going on in our lives, and, our past, our present, our hopes for the future, and many other things. We've done other things. We've done crafts, and we've eaten lunch, and we've had tea and coffee and all that. But I think the central power of what we've been doing together is sharing our stories and listening. And so as I was doing this, I thought, wouldn't it be so incredible if I could somehow broaden this and make this sort of a bigger women's retreat around the world. And I started dreaming of, because there was the whole Zoom craze of maybe I could do women's retreats on Zoom virtually. But then actually, as this podcast was getting going, Full Moon Women, I realized, actually this podcast is like a worldwide retreat of a moment in time when you can share a stretch of time listening to another person's story and truly being present with that person. And And then sort of the interaction or the back and forth that happens in the real retreats here in the Netherlands, when a woman shares her story and then other people in the room respond or ask questions or say what her story means to them. We've, in the podcast form, tried to do that through SpeakerPipe, which is and you can go into the show notes and find the link for SpeakerPipe to leave a voice memo. That's us inviting people who've listened to the show and listened to a woman's story to share your thoughts, your reflections, how her story, impacted you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be the most thought through thing that you ever said or let come out of your mouth. It's really meant to just connect with the person who decided to share their story. So the sort of the template for the show is based on this yurt, in a real yurt in Holland, in the Netherlands, and women who met in person and shared their stories. And so we continue that by producing this show that is all around the world. I mean, in the coming year, you're going to hear stories, a woman from Cambodia and other women from other countries, as well as, America and other parts of the West. But this is this ever expanding, but the word that we would use in Holland, gezellig, which is sort of an untranslatable word, but closest in English means cozy experience. So that's where the yurt comes in and the inspiration comes in for this podcast. So I do invite you very much to leave a voice message. I would love to hear from you about what's been going on in your mind and your heart when you've listened to some of these other women's stories, when you've listened to the interviews that I've done. Just leave us a voice memo. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. Just something that's on your mind. And that is part of the juice and the magic of what we're doing here. I will let you know that the next story that comes up after this bonus episode is the incredible story of Jake Kaiser. She was living a high stress, big career life in a city, and then she decided to completely and utterly change her life and start a farm in rural Mississippi. So that's her story coming up, and then following hers will be my interview with Marianne Cantwell. Thanks for listening. So glad you're here and hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.